This is section 8.4, and in 8.4, day 2, we're going to be multiplying rational expressions. So we're going to take two fractions, and we are going to multiply them. So now, here you can see the directions easily state, simplify each and state the domain. Okay, so what I've done here is I've given you a problem to start out with where everything is already factored out. So you don't have any factoring to do on this first example. What you do need to do though is you do need to state your domain, and then you also need to be able to cancel and simplify each thing. So how do we state our domain? Well, stating our domain with multiplication is no different than stating the domain with when we were simplifying. I simply take the parts of the denominator, the parts that are in the bottom, and I'm going to set them not equal to 0. So in this case, I have an x minus 8. I'm going to set that not equal to 0. I have an x plus 3. I'm going to set that not equal to 0. And I have an x plus 10. Anything that I have in the denominator, I'm going to set not equal to 0. Okay, so then what I do here now is I'm going to solve these just like we did before. Add 8, so x here. When I add 8, I get x equals positive 8. If I add 8, here I'm going to subtract 3. I would get x cannot be negative 3. And then finally at the end I'm going to subtract 10, so x cannot be negative 10. Okay, so this right here, these are my three values for my domain. Okay, so those are the three values that x cannot be, because that makes x 0, or that makes 0 in the denominator, and we end up dividing by 0. So, taking care of the domain. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel out anything that I have on the top and the bottom that's the same. Okay, so as I look at this, and it does not matter if it's in the same fraction or a different fraction. So for example, I know I can cross out my x plus 3s. I've got an x plus 3 on top, I've got an x plus 3 on the bottom. I can cancel those guys out. I see that I have an x minus 8 over here on the bottom and an x minus 8 over here on the top. I can cross those guys out. Now, is there anything else that's the same on the top and the bottom? No. So my final answer here is simply x plus 2 over x plus 10. This is my solution, simplified down, and my domain, x cannot be negative, or x cannot be 8, x cannot be negative 3, and x cannot be negative 10. Okay, so in these examples now, we're going to do the same thing, except we are not going to have it already factored for us. We're going to actually have to factor. So I've got some steps here. Again, we're going to factor all and any expressions that we can. Okay, so we're going to factor all and any expressions. Then once we factor, we're going to state the domain, which x values make the denominator become 0. That hasn't changed. And then what we're going to do is we are going to cross things out. We're going to cancel things. So we're going to take step 3 here. You can take step 3 and just cross this step 3 out, because we're going to cancel things out. So we're going to simplify the expression by canceling anything that's the same in the numerator and then the denominator, and then my answer is going to be whatever we have left over. Okay, so let's look at this first example. I've got x squared plus 6, or excuse me, x squared plus x minus 6 divided by x minus 5 times x squared minus 25 over x squared plus 4x plus 3. Okay, so very first thing I want to do, as I look here, can I factor this guy? I can't factor that, so that's not going to change. Can I factor the top left? I sure can. X squared plus x and minus 6. So I need factors of negative 6 that add to 1. Well, when I do that, I get factors of negative 6 that add to 1 are going to be negative 3, 3 and negative 2. So x squared plus 3x minus 2x minus 6. Group them. This hasn't changed. Take out an x, left with an x plus 3. Take out a 2, left with an x plus 3. So I have an x plus 3 and an x minus 2. Okay? How we factor has not, none of that has changed. So in my first fraction, I have x plus 3, x minus 2, and on the bottom I have an x minus 5. Okay, let's talk about the x squared minus 25. That one looks a little bit different. And you'll notice that the middle term is missing. So anytime a middle term is missing, I'm going to put in, if it's missing, it's going to be 0. So it's going to be x squared plus 0x minus 25. So I need factors of negative 25 that add to 0. Well, that's negative 5 and positive 5. So again, I bring down x squared minus 5x plus 5x and minus 25. Group them. And again, I know I'm going through this grouping part pretty fast, but we should be used to this by now in terms of how we're factoring. Take out an x, I'm left with an x minus 5. Take out a 5, left with an x minus 5. So I have an x plus 5 and an x minus 5. That's going to go on the top. Again, anytime you have no middle term, there's no b term there. Always put in 0 for it. And then the last one is x squared plus 4x plus 3. Factoring this guy, factors of 3 that add to 4 are 3 and 1. So I have x squared plus 1x plus 3x plus 3. Take out an x here, left with an x plus 1. Take out a 3 here, left with an x plus 1. I have x plus 3 and x plus 1. That's going to go on the bottom. Okay, so now I've got everything factored. Top, bottom, top left, top right, bottom right. Okay, now I got to do my domain. Now on my domain, only thing I'm worried about again is the bottom. So I take each part of the bottom, set it not equal to 0, just like I did in the last problem. And then I'm going to solve them. So here I'm going to add 5. X cannot be positive 5. Here I'm going to subtract 3, so x cannot be negative 3. And here I'm going to subtract 1, so x cannot be negative 1. Okay, so these are my domains down here. Then I'm going to come back up to the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for everything that I have on the top and bottom that are the same. Okay. Well, right now I can see for sure I have an x minus 5 right here. I have an x minus 5 right there. Okay. I have an x plus 5 on top. Do I have an x plus 5 on the bottom? I do not. I have an x minus 2 on the top. Or excuse me, this is x plus 3, isn't it? Yep. Okay, so I have an x plus 3 on the top. I'm going to cross that out with the x plus 3 on the bottom. I have an x minus 2 on top. I don't have an x minus 2 on the bottom. Can't do anything. I have an x plus 5 on the top, and I don't have an x plus 5 on the bottom. So my final answer here is going to be on the top, I have x minus 2, and I have an x plus 5. And then on the bottom, I have an x plus 1. This is my simplified rational expression. Okay, so now you should be able to complete the 6 problems on your 8.4 day 2 class kick.